Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I've just bit my own tongue. Oh, I was eating Tang Fastics as well.
Oh yeah,
Oh, man.
Get all that formic acid or whatever the fuck it is in there. Get them in you.
Okay.
Like, have you ever had like really toxic waste sweets and stuff? Apparently, like my son's tried them today. You know, like the things where you like the super sour and it's like, and apparently it roams just like. You can imagine the face I just pulled there, guys. It's just like, you know, a 2.5-year-old sucking on some really sour sweets, and I'm like, definitely used to be ones that used to rip the actual skin off my gums, like it's in like the roof of your mouth. You're like, I don't know if I should have any more of these.
Yeah, it's the ones where you can feel them actively attacking your teeth.
How's your tongue now?
It'll be fine.
Okay, good. Right,
fine.
well, we've got a podcast to do, so, you know, you don't need your mouth for that or anything.
That's fine.
Thumbs up, thumbs down situation. So, you know.
Yeah, the entirety of the rest of this podcast will be conducted in mime. Good luck, listeners.
Yeah. To be fair, that would be, I think, in keeping with what we're doing in this podcast. I think that mime is the perfect art for what we're about to speak about. So, you know, thumbs up, Rich. You've been to Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can speak. It's okay.
Thumb
it's
up.
Wait, what?
Nod.
And and I imagined the game series we're speaking about that we've been playing the last couple of weeks for today's pod. I don't know why. I know nothing of Japanese culture apart from what I see from the outside. You've experienced it. Is it quite quintessentially Japanese, almost in a way? I'm like... it's a big broad brush.
That's a very,
broad brush.
Very,
I just tried to
very
say
broad brush kind of a question. I don't know if I would necessarily say quintessential, but I would say that it's definitely indicative of a certain train of thought.
Okay, cool.
School of thought, even.
Yeah. Okay.
We're doing Katamari.
We're doing Katamari. Yeah, we're doing Katamari. That is in so not calamari. So a Katamari is what? Rich.
Big squishy ball thing that you roll around and it rolls things up.
Yeah.
And the games are batshit in the best possible way.
Yeah. So let's start with, I'm going to kind of like introduce it with like probing questions because that is in like, so almost like, you know, like as in what is
a beginner's guide to Katamari.
Almost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So because I'm just an idiot and I'm like, you know, I'm trying to get my head around it still. So,
I did no research for this.
All right.
So let's go.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you've got a big squishy ball that you roll around. You are a prince.
Yeah.
And the main kind of character guy almost really, but it's seen through the eyes of his dad, who is the king of all cosmos.
Yeah, basically.
Cosmos.
Yeah. Usually there's a problem that occurs that needs fixing. The problem is usually caused by the king, and he makes his son sort it all out.
Yeah.
The whole thing has some very dark undertones.
Yeah, he's an absolute shithouse.
He is a terrible, terrible cosmic entity, I guess.
Yeah.
But considering how bright and breezy and quirky the games are on the surface, yes, there is a definite dark heart.
Which you can tell, even they have a juxtaposition between... right, so I'm just going to stop here. So I have played the first game in the series, Katamari Damacy, but the Reroll, which is the HD version, which got released in 2020. You have also played that. Had you? I assumed you'd already played Katamari Damacy at a previous date from...
I didn't play the original release, but I have played Reroll previously.
Yeah. So Damacy, sat here. Damacy, pointed at myself there. And Damacy came out in 2004, only in North America and Japan, not in Europe. It didn't get released in Europe till 2020.
Blown out tiny minds.
Apparently, that's literally what they said.
Yeah.
They said it would not suit the European market. It's just like
sophisticated gaming palette of Europeans.
Just like, what the fuck? So
how wrong you were.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and so I've played that for the first time. You've played it before and played a little bit again, dabbled again.
Yep.
Then we'll try to make sure that we get our PSP, PS Vita fill this week as well. So I then played, which was the next game chronologically, which we've played, which is Me and My Katamari, which is basically just the PSP version of Katamari Damacy. There's a couple of things different in it, but it's pretty much essentially the same game. You played on then Beautiful Katamari?
Yep, on the Xbox 360.
Cool. And then also the PS Vita version.
Yep, Touch My Katamari,
Yeah.
which, considering this whole episode is basically about balls, has taken on an entirely different dimension.
I mean, to be fair though, like as in, it feels like they were eventually going to go that way into just slide into innuendo.
It was always going to happen.
Yeah. No. So back to where we were then. So Katamari Damacy Reroll. So we've both played that. This is my first experience with Katamari the last couple of weeks playing on these two games.
Oh, really? Completely from cold?
Yeah. Never played it before.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So the king of all cosmos, we were back at the theme songs, weren't we? So flip it back. So the music and the vibe of the game, very jolly, like is almost in like, so the overarching dark theme of things where you have this squishy ball and you stick things to it to roll it up, and the idea is that you're trying to make new planets and stars in Katamari Damacy because the King Cosmos got fucking wankered and destroyed the universe apart from the Earth, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's all like got lovely sort of jolly, happy music and rainbows and things, but then you also have this really haunting, weird theme song for the King of Cosmos when he like lures over the Earth and you, the 5 centimeter prince that is his son, and it's just like he's like dun, dun, and it's just like, but when he speaks, it's like a DJ scratching noise as well. Yep. It's so weird. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like someone was dragging some sort of weird fur over me while I was playing this game. Like, as in, I'd say it freaked me out more than I expected it to.
It is hugely unsettling.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, for me, it's the stuff like... I have the soundtrack, right, on CD. Went and got the soundtrack, which, and I've said time and time again, that is the highest compliment I can pay a soundtrack, as far as I'm concerned.
I bought
like, it's such an eclectic, weird mix of genres and styles, and it's all very distinct, but it all coalesces. And that goes with the art style as well. That's bright and breezy, and I will never not be amused by the sight of things like animals and people being rolled up in these increasingly massive Katamari and their legs just wiggling frantically up and down. Like, in my head, that's how sheep walk anyway, right? They're like these floating clouds with these like frantically wiggling legs. So seeing that in a game like really spoke to me when I first played Beautiful Katamari. Damacy Reroll, like the plot is one of my favorite ones. Like, Damacy Reroll is my kind of go-to Katamari game nowadays. And for me, it was all kind of summed up where the king goes and wrecks a load of stuff because he's gone on a bender, but then like quite soon after the game starts, confides in you about how it felt kind of good.
Yeah,
to like go and like destroy the galaxy.
He loves it
and all that kind of shit. I love those asides. Or like, we can believe in you for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I love the way that the dialogue's been translated in this.
Yeah, it is weird, and I feel like we spoke about this before, where it's like, what is the translation? Like, is in and how does the accuracy? I mean, I think you talk about Castlevania and things, and it's almost like, is it better because the translation might be terrible, or is the translation bob on and it's just really well written? And is it a bit of both? It probably is, and it's just like it is strange that I don't understand, and I think there genuinely is something in where it's like, my tiny little European mind can't quite understand what's, like, you're right. Yeah, you were right to not give me this game, especially when I was a child. And I mean, like, when I was like 16 years old, I mean, like, freaking out. Like, as in, so yeah, I mean, so if I kind of say what I was impressed with the game, like the colours, the sights, the sounds, like you say, everything that is in, all the environment that you roll around in, like, it is a feast for the senses. That is in, it's really brilliant. Like, like you've said about the soundtrack as well. That is in, like it definitely feels like one of the best sandboxes you can play in. That is in, and the missions are almost, I guess the missions really are sort of like, oh, you've got to make a star or a planet, and then, we're going to give you, they always says like sort of 13 Earth minutes or whatever to roll up a Katamari that starts off at, it's usually like 5 or 10 centimeters, I think it is, isn't it? And then make it into 1.5 meters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you any more than that. You've just kind of got to go and crack on. Like, as in, so, and I don't think that changes in Damacy Reroll. There's two different ways, and you can make a constellation which has got like a specific sort of goal-based one.
Yeah.
And then there is just a make the biggest Katamari you can.
Yeah, basically.
So yeah, that, and again, the simplicity of that is very impressive. That is in. Do you want to take any more with that?
No, I was just going to say, like, it's pretty consistent across the games that I've played as well, where you'll have a kind of a size stipulation, but yeah, there will be something like roll up things that are shiny, or roll up things that are red, or a couple of them later on will be like things that are workers, which you look at it and you're like, okay, I'm not really sure that involves.
Yeah, no, what's that?
Half the puzzle is working out what the game's interpretation is, and then going along that line. But that'll, at least for later games, I think it did a little bit in Damacy Reroll, but it kind of ties into the scoring mechanics as well.
Okay, which I think that I was probably struggling with and understanding that, and I'll go into that a little bit more when I talk about me and my Katamari, I think, because I did struggle with, when he was sort of saying, no, the King of Cosmos, I don't think necessarily, he probably never says anything nice to you. Like, he probably, so like, even if you scored well and it was like, oh, you've made this size of a ball, it never really tells you like what, like, how you do that.
Good job. Yeah. Like, you always fucked up. Yeah. Like, it's just a case of how bad.
Which is slightly funny. So I'm going to take a bit of a detour here, and I'm going to offend you and say that I really didn't enjoy myself after a while with the game. So I found it really boring.
How does it feel to be wrong?
That's fine. It's okay. I don't know. You tell me. No, I found it really boring after a while because so the missions kind of become. It's like, all right, the first mission is 3 minutes long, for example, and you've got to make a Katamari like 20 centimeters big. Then it'll be like, oh, the next mission is 10 minutes long, and you've got to make a bigger Katamari. And it's like, and next mission is 17 minutes long, and you've got to make a bigger Katamari. But it just kind of stays the same as a concept. So whilst you were quite thrilled by the idea of rolling people up and cats and things and stuff, after a while, and the game's only about 4 or 5 hours long, after about 2 hours, I was like, I'm kind of done. Like, as in, I don't need any more Katamari action. Like, as in, like, and I know that you're going to say, well, you miss out on rolling up bigger things and stuff. And
that is basically the progression, yes.
Yeah. And it does, it's weird, like, as in, I was probably more excited when I was rolling up bigger things, but I was also a bit like, but I'm still just doing the exact same thing, mechanic that I was doing previously. So I feel like whilst I was impressed by the, it'd be really glib of me to say trappings, but as in like more the environment that I was playing in, I was impressed by that and the weirdness and kookiness of the game. Actually, the main thrust of the game, after a little while, I kind of became bored in pretty quickly.
I think it's understandable. For me, because I think this originally came out on PS2, did we say?
Yeah, PS2.
So I can imagine that, this whole notion of starting really, really small, rolling up things to get bigger, so you can roll up bigger things to get bigger, so you can roll up bigger things. That kind of progression, and the fact that it will generally be quite a smooth transition from being like on a desk to suddenly rolling up continents and stuff like that. On a PS2, I can imagine would have been mind-blowing at the time. Personally, now I just find it fun because I like you say, the trappings, and am apparently a slightly tweaked individual.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we usually have a similar vibe of feeling. Like, as in, we have differences of opinions and stuff, but certainly it's weird. Like, I definitely feel like with this one, I know that I don't feel anywhere near as fond of it as you do. And I, by looking at general review scores and stuff, seem to be wrong, which I'm fine with. That is in, I mean? Like, I'm okay with being the person that's like, this game felt fine to me. Like, as in, and I think that you're right. I think there's definitely if you'd have seen this on a PS2 and it was that sort of era where like you wouldn't have something that, controlled. That's the wrong word because I didn't like the controls either. But controlled so well in terms of like the sandbox idea of it, like is in getting the ultimate little playground, just muck around in basically. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and I kind of had a bit of a sort of love-hate relationship with the size of objects. Like as in they didn't make sense. Like as in I was sort of like, I was like, why can I roll this person up but I can't roll this cat up? Like as in, you know what I mean? It was just like it just didn't funnily enough didn't stick the landing for me. Like as in it's just like as in, I've just thought of it right. I bounced off this quite hard, which is ironic because you're not meant to bounce off the Katamari. Like as in, it's just like it just didn't have. Like I say, I really respected the idea of it, but I did not end up loving this game at all. It was a solid 5 out of 10 for me personally, which it was on the right side of. I would recommend. This is me saying this.
Yeah.
I recommend you trying it and playing it, and definitely giving it a go. Certainly the reroll, which it looks great. Do you know what I mean? Like as in, but for me, I was like. It felt like this. I am going to be. I don't give a shit. I'm going to offend you and the game and the followers and stuff here. I probably not mean to be like not offensively, but I would. If this was 2024, I would pay £2 for that on the Nintendo eShop. That's the kind of game that it felt like in 2024 to me. That's the kind like, which sounds bad. But it's just like, it's kind of like how I felt about it. It just felt like any other weird sandboxing. So I feel like it's definitely of its time. And therefore, like you said, probably absolutely amazing back then. But for me now, I think, I'm surprised it got a re-release, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But then I've not played any of the rest of Katamari either, so...
So the reason I haven't immediately retorted to you saying that you would spend £2 on it is twofold. I was popping your score on the spreadsheet along with mine. I know this has caused problem at the end of the year when we're going through the brackets. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. And it's my favourite one nowadays because of the kind of purity of that experience. Okay. Like you can go in, you can pick it up, you can muck about with it for a little bit. Like you say, feel like you've had your fill, put it down and then pick it back up again. I really like the way it looks and sounds. It feels very, very snappy and smooth to play. I know you're not a fan of the controls, but going back to Touch My Katamari and Beautiful Katamari, it does feel nicer to play, I think. Okay. But I think the big overriding factor to all this is that I did buy it on a sale originally. I don't think I quite paid £2 for it, but it was certainly discounted. And I
think I paid £7 for it.
I was going to say, like,
I don't regret that. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying, but I just what I meant was that the type of game it was. I feel like I blast past these in the Nintendo eShop all the time. These kind of things where it's just like a sandboxy kind of like, and it won't be like I'm not trying to be derogatory, but it's almost like it's like I feel like it's of a certain type of game where I'm like I feel like now. It was probably the precursor and the thing that set it all off.
That was what
Funnily enough, it was the thing that rolled up everything into a big ball and made it...
That's what I was about to ask.
A ball of momentum.
It only just occurred to me that it might have been.
I think it will have been. I think it would have been.
Or at least one of the early ones.
Yeah.
I'd never really thought about it like that.
And I think that's probably why I was sort of only asking that question at the start. Is almost like the culture around it and things like that. I wonder if this was like, and therefore I probably... Well, I think I'm still being fair to it, giving it a 5 out of 10 for me personally, because I still feel like it's a recommendation, but I'm just not that fussed about it. I felt like, as well, and when we were speaking about the scoring system before, and you were saying that part of the puzzle is working out what they're actually... Look, there's Tanner from last week.
Yeah.
There he goes. Part of the fun is almost like working out, how you do score and things. But, like, I kind of had the same sort of feeling, and I think it might be me then. Like, as in, Parappa the Rapper? Like, when I couldn't work out how to play the game on the PSP, and I couldn't work out how to land those perfect button rhythms and stuff, and I'm like, is something being lost in translation for me personally with both of these games, where I'm just not getting what it wants me to do? Which I'm willing to accept that might be the case. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, like... I'm just but one man against the king of the cosmos. but he's a massive shit.
And that's why I love it. Genuinely, like that has a big part of the appeal for me. The gameplay is, if I say functional, it's going to sound like I'm damning it with faint praise, but it is for me. So much of it is about the other bits that are hanging off it, the trappings. Like you say, and I love how that King of Cosmos is written, and I love how he acts and how much of a utter ballbag he is to you at all times, which incidentally is a really, really good segue to Beautiful Katamari, if I may.
No, please do.
I
mean, I clearly have no love for the series, so it's fine.
Clearly, right.
We will go back to my review of me and My Katamari, but for now, you carry on.
I mean, this is a quick one, because this is a 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
It's where it started for me, and I can't remember why I picked it up.
It's got a very nice case, hasn't it?
I think that's probably...
I remember it.
Probably part of the appeal. I think I looked at it. I don't know if I played a demo or something like that on a whim. But this was just when I was starting to get an appreciation for how weird Japanese weird can weird. And there was something about it that appealed to me, and I started playing it. And so the whole idea is that the King of the Cosmos basically tears a giant black hole in the, not atmosphere because they're in space, but he's playing tennis while he's on holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Hits a ball too hard,
no.
creates a black hole. So you have to step in and find bigger and bigger things to try and plug the gap, basically, and put everything back where it was. Obviously, he takes all of the credit for the work as you go, and is just generally quite abusive.
Everyone knows the King of the Cosmos. Everyone's got one in their life somewhere. You are, if you haven't, you are him.
I still had my save file from 2012.
That's cool.
So it was kind of fun dipping back in. I had got to that point where you are, the sense of scale on it was one of the things that really impressed me, because you do get to the stage that you are rolling up continents and land masses, and the whole thing takes on an even more psychedelic, insane kind of vibe. The bit that got me, the bit that grabbed me at the time, was when I first failed a mission, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I am a sucker for a good bit of failure, me. So when I was first starting to play this, I was dabbling with writing. I wanted to be a screenwriter and stuff like that, and I studied it a bit at university and all that kind of stuff. And picked this up a few years after leaving university, started playing it. Failed. And instead of just getting a kind of failure screen and having the King of the Cosmos shout at you like he usually does, you get put on a pool table. And you are still controlling the prince, and you're basically just trying to avoid these giant cue balls that your father is firing at you. Yeah. And more of them come in, and he starts berating you. And then he starts berating you for being a slacker. And then he's like, what next? Are you going to be a screenwriter? I'm like, oh no! He knows. The King of Cosmos knows my soul. And there was just something about that, and the fact that, I was quote unquote self-employed, technically unemployed at the time, sacking off, trying to do anything, self-employed, actually making any money in favour of playing this, and then being yelled at by the King of Cosmos for trying to be a screenwriter and all that. And it was just, there was
That's nice that you've had that kind of connection with
it. There was just something about that I was like, you know what, and it kind of puts it elevates it for me. It genuinely does. And it's up there for me with that bit of Metal Gear Solid 2, when Roy Campbell's AI starts malfunctioning, he says about turning the console off and all that kind of stuff. Because I got to that bit about 2 a.m, and then he starts saying about you've been playing this too long, you need to turn it off now.
Yes, I have, Roy.
It scared me in a way that I have not been scared by a video game before or since. This tapped into that same little nerve bundle. Okay. And again, really endeared me to it. So I think basically the theme is I just like being on the receiving end of abuse from my games.
I mean, I'm going to stop you there and read what my note says for the fail screen and me and My Katamari. I kind of hate the fail screen. I just don't get why the King of Cosmos is such a dick to the prince. He calls him puny, tiny and wimpy. It's a bit fucking annoying, actually. It's so weird that we have such different obtuse reactions to that. And I genuinely think that it's my softening as a dad. That is in like, as in.
You see, I know the king of the cosmos would be nothing without me.
And
I know where the power in this lies.
And I think it is just literally like, as in, and I'm, this is always a difficult conversation, kind of like where you kind of go, well, like you feel a certain way because this, it's not that. What I'm trying to say is almost, I know for my specific circumstances with my children and stuff, like as in probably over the last 6 years of having a child, I've definitely softened up to be like,
you wouldn't put them on a pool table and start firing massive pool balls.
But the problem is that you've heard me speak about them be absolute bastards and shits on the podcast we've got. Like, it's not necessarily just that, but it's just yeah, I don't know, like. He really goes to town on the prince.
Yeah, he does.
And there's never any rebuttal. Like, no. And the prince is 5 centimeters tall, and it's just like,
mute.
Yeah, and it's just that, and it's like, it's not kind.
No, it's absolutely not. But I guess this is the difference, isn't it? I find that funny. You don't.
But I think that I probably did at one point in my life. It's like, I don't know what it is. I think it's probably just your impending doom. Like, as it starts to creep on me and I think about it more, the less I find things like The Legal Gentleman funny. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, The Legal Gentleman was funny when I was a kid. And now when I'm older, I'm like, I'm terrified and freaking out. Do you know what I mean? And when's that nosebleed thing going to happen to me? Like, all that kind of stuff that just sort of like, I think that just you... And clearly it can't just be an age thing, like, as in, but it's almost like I definitely feel softer in my mid-30s and less ready for giant cosmic beings, gods, bullying little fucking puny people.
I'm not fucking scared of him. How's he gonna fix everything without me? No, he's
fucking
not.
Roll you up.
Who's doing the rolling, son? It's me.
Oh, you're all right. Okay, you are the prince in your head, right? Okay, right. I see what's going on here. It's fine. So, have you got anything else to say about beautiful Katamari in terms of anything?
No, but there are a couple of good kaiju, big stompy monster references and stuff like that when you get bigger.
Yeah.
Definitely not rolling up Godzilla, but you're definitely rolling up Godzilla.
Okay.
All that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, as you were. So
is it any different at all from...
Fundamentally,
Damacy?
not really, no. A lot of the mechanics and the movements are very, very similar. I think they did start to put in a bit of DLC type stuff, but I don't have any of that. And I'm struggling to think of any other mechanics. I think possibly they started to lean a little bit more into the scoring side of things and giving you more of the kind of goal-based stuff. But yeah, it's still quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The soundtrack's not as good.
Okay. Does it surprise you that there's been so many Katamari games, considering that I think that it sounds like there's not been a lot of progression or anything different necessarily? I mean, I think there's a little bit of progression, and certainly I've seen it in me and My Katamari, but on the PSP. But it doesn't. There seems to have been. I think there's been like 10 games, and I don't think that it's changed as a core concept, and that must mean that everybody thinks it's great. But I think it's bollocks.
I once upon a time had a you could get those like animated backgrounds on your phone. I had one that was the prince with a Katamari, and he would just roll stuff up quietly in the background while you were looking at your phone.
That sounds nice. I think I'll be okay with that.
But ultimately, like, it wasn't like anything was getting bigger or anything like that. He was just picking up stuff. But that is at heart what the kind of core experience is, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that you can distill it down to something that can run idly on your phone when you're not using it is telling. I think I'm not surprised that there's been so many games, really, considering I think if you are into that mixture of soundtrack, vibrant colour schemes and visuals, quirky animation, and, in my case, I guess, emotional abuse, then, you are going to tap into that and you are going to be a fan.
Roll me, daddy. Roll me.
But I would argue, especially considering Touch My Katamari, which we will get to, I would argue that the more they tried to mess with the formula, the worse it got.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like when we were talking about Driver, actually.
No, well, surely we don't need to go back to trial because it's so good. But like, as in, like thinking about like the previous week, like didn't they ultimately mess with the formula in the best possible way in San Francisco?
But it wasn't as far removed as getting out of the car. Like that was the radical misstep, was getting out of the car.
But
the point is that the main
staying in the
mechanic
car.
kept you in cars.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. That's fine. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. It's a good point. Just talk about Driver again. So yeah, my favourite part of Driver. No, so me and My Katamari then. So PSP, and I guess I haven't got much more to say about it, and this is what the point I was kind of driving at with Beautiful Katamari then. So it came out, I think, the same year or the year after maybe, as Beautiful Katamari, and it is very much the exact same game, I would say, as Damacy. You know what I mean? Like, as in there's very little that seems to evolve. The concept and the storyline is that, you know, the King Cosmos, guess what? He fucks up. That is in, so he comes on holiday to Earth with the prince and his family, and then he produces a tidal wave by doing a belly flop in the sea or surfing, I think. Oh, it's a classic. Is it rich? Unbelievable.
Classic.
Right. And destroys some islands. That is in, and then, so again, all the same things we said for this game that we said for Damacy. It's beautiful. It looks really great in the PSP. The trappings and trimmings are really nice. Like there's in the islands that you navigate around, and the animals that you help are all lovely and quirky and fun. You know, you've got to help an ant and like, you know, a little sparrow and stuff. It's just, it feels like very homely. But I'm doing the exact same thing I was doing on the previous game, where I kind of gave up on it halfway through because I was doing the exact same thing I was doing during the entirety of that game. Although on the PSP, it's even worse because it's fucking crippling. The controls they have put onto the PSP. So the concept of this game is that you roll around using 2 analog sticks. There are not 2 analog sticks on the PSP, so obviously, fair enough, that's going to be, you know, you're going to have to try it. So, fine. So you've tried to port, you know, this game to the PSP that you can roll around with an analog stick. How about you let us use the analog stick? In Europe, because they fucking hate us, not allowed to use the analog stick. You have to use the D-pad. In North America, you can use the analog stick. In Japan, you can use the analog stick. It's like they're punishing us. Really? In Europe, you use the D-pad to roll around, and you cannot do it. And I'm not kidding. That is, I know I'm going back to being soft in mid-30s again. My hands were crippled after about an hour trying to play this, and I really did try and play for a significant amount of time to give it a chance to kind of develop and understand the game a bit more, and think, oh, maybe it would have something different happen. The only thing that I found that was different from this was that there was more of the goal-based levels. So it was quite immediate in it. Like, so the first couple of levels, like, make a Katamari bigger. Right, fine. And then after that, it goes, all right, you need to get a shiny Katamari. So then I'm playing, and I must have failed this level 8 times trying to make this Katamari shiny. And again, this is me being lost in translation, I think, here. I couldn't understand what I was picking up that wasn't shiny or shiny. Like, as in, it gave you a little bit of an idea at the start of the level. It was like, oh, make a Katamari shiny. So I was like, right, okay. The first time, I was just, you know, right, I'm going to roll around and just make a big Katamari. You know what I mean? Like, as in, I'll just do it.
Get everything.
Yeah, and then clearly that was going to fail. Like, as in, because it was like, it's not a specific goal enough. And I was like, okay, that's fair enough. Do you know what I mean? But about, like, I genuinely failed this level 8 times before I made it shiny enough. And by about the 3rd attempt, I was like, I probably really need to focus now and do a good job of what I should be doing. And I was still getting it wrong. I was furious by the time I got to the point where I actually managed to do it. And it just never gave me any tips or hints about what I should be picking up.
Didn't give you a counter or anything like that, so you could see like if you did pick one up or anything like that?
No, so that's the problem. No. So I noticed that it did that on Damacy with, like, you know, it's like, pick up swans or whatever to make Cygnus. That is in, on the PSP one, it just wasn't, it wasn't telling you what it was picking up. Right. And it was just like, you know, and it was like, oh God, if you knew that, then fair enough, I could aim for those things.
Yeah, because even if it was just a static counter and it ticked up, you'd be like, oh, that thing.
But to be fair, that's what's really annoying, that is, it did do that on one where it was trying to make it sweet. Right. That is in, but that was obvious because you picked up sweet things, but the shiny things, it didn't do that, and it didn't make it obvious what the shiny things were either. And it was just like, annoying. I was like, argh! So that, like, you know, made me pull out the tiny little bit of hair that I already had. Then I was already fucked off with the King Cosmos and his bad vibes, and his bad energy towards the prince. And it just, and I just got to the point there, like I say, it was almost with the execution of the port that is in. So it's just the fact that they made it so hard and so painful to play on the PSP, where you have to do this finger contortion sort of thing just to you have to press the D-pad and the front-facing buttons, triangle, square, circle, and X to roll even, and then the R and L button are used to kind of pivot around the Katamari.
Oh, right.
So you're kind of doing this. You're not really holding the PSP. You're almost in like a claw fashion. It's so weird. And I just didn't understand it. I've never come across... Not never. I have come across. I've come across games recently that is in where it felt like they've just kind of thought we can port whatever we want to the PSP and it'll work, and it's just and they haven't thought really about it being,
So were you effectively
anything.
using your D-pad and your face buttons as the dual analog sticks?
Yes,
then?
effectively, yeah.
Because is that not basically the same control scheme for like Peace Walker and stuff like that? Like a couple of third-person shooter type things.
Yeah, it's I'd say most third-person shooters and also the first-person shooters really, and I've bemoaned them before. Do you know what I mean? And I'm going to be honest, I really enjoyed like Peace Walker, for example, but there is like you cannot be a human being that enjoys gaming and not notice that is not a good way to control something. Do you know what I mean? People kind of go, "Oh, like, this is amazing and stuff," but they just make excuses for something that. And I was just like, this really hurt me as a human. I had sore knuckles after playing this for an hour, and that might be a little bit of my arthritis and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was like, it shouldn't be the case where I'm actually physically in pain playing a game, and also emotionally in pain from the beating the King of the Cosmos is handing out to me because he's such a dick.
Did you consider just being better?
No, I didn't. No.
Well, there's your problem.
I mean, I tried to be better, and I kept failing. It just felt like a really bad, vibe for me.
Yeah,
it was like I was on a real come down. In all seriousness, I could not give. If I'm giving 5 out of 10 to Damacy Reroll, I'm giving this a 3. You know what I mean? It was the same stuff, not done as well as Damacy Reroll was. Do you know what I mean? And I was just at the end of this whole experience of playing 2 Katamari games. I came into this seeing raving reviews and being super excited myself because I thought this would be the exact kind of thing, a puzzle game with lovely, vibrant colours and sort of and kookiness to it, and it just didn't go down that way at all. And I've come out of it just thinking, I wonder what it is that's just not stuck. That is in, and if I was going to play a game where I'm moving something around on a PSP, like is in a blob, it'd be Mercury. That's what I would go back to play now, not Katamari at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fair enough because I guess the if the whole mechanic is around moving things and they haven't worked out a good way to make it move, that's a problem, isn't it?
Did they do that on the PS Vita?
Sort of.
Okay.
So we did have 2 sticks. You could use touchscreen controls, for it is Touch My Katamari, and it's on a Vita. I never did.
Okay.
Because fuck that. I've got sticks.
Yeah.
The bit where it came undone was kind of threefold. Let's call it fourfold. Okay, let me see if I can do this. First of all, soundtrack, I have genuinely forgotten most of it. Whereas some of the tunes from Damacy, mainly the theme tune,
your theme tune now.
I will hum that or sing that at least once a week without fail. Guaranteed. And if I start, my wife will join in. It's that sort of thing. So this soundtrack isn't anywhere near that. Graphically, weirdly, it runs nicely and all that kind of stuff. It looks vibrant on the menus, and when you're kind of going between what are called requests here, it's bright, breezy, all that kind of stuff. You get into the levels, and I swear they look slightly washed out. Like some of that vibrant colour has just gone. And I don't know if that's because of the version of the Vita I'm on or anything like that, because I'm not on one of the original like OLED kind of models or anything like that. I'm on one of the later ones, so that could be it. But it looks okay in the menus. It's still as bright, but to my eye, it's not as vibrant.
Interesting.
They also really spread out all of the items that you roll up. So it's not like it's sort of densely packed little sandbox worlds like in the other ones. And I think that is because on the rear touchpad, one of the big mechanics they put in was you could stretch the Katamari out into a long, thin shape, or you could push it together into a tall, thin shape.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't really know why.
Yeah.
I think it's because...
It's called having a touchpad.
Yeah, and like ultimately, I think they looked at that and then worked backwards, and it suffers for it. Because, you have these items that are kind of spread out, and then you kind of make yourself into a long, thin sausage, because you can reach slightly further.
I don't know why I found that so funny.
You can roll them up, and then that's it. But like, I didn't really find anywhere where I needed to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a core mechanic, you've got to squeeze down to fit into this gap or anything like that. And it just felt so tacked on. The worst bit for me was the fact that you have, when you do these requests, you basically get candy, which operates like a currency, which you can use to buy cosmetic items for the king, to unlock further rewards, or you can unlock XYZ, or you can buy fan Damacy, which is also like a different kind of more premium currency. And I'm looking at the corner of the room trying desperately to remember all this stuff.
You don't have to.
Well, you can find you can find them in the request levels and stuff like that you go through, because the king's got lazy, which is a bad start for the plot, because it's bad enough when he's a klutz or a drunkard and ruins everything. When he's lazy, everything feels lazy. Yeah. It just, the whole game feels lazy. It feels weirdly for a series that's been so out there and quirky and fucking weird. This feels like Katamari by numbers, and it feels tired.
Yeah.
Which, when I'm talking about Katamari, I appreciate what you're saying about the emotional abuse and the sort of one note gameplay. But for me, if a Katamari game is tired, that's a fucking cardinal sin.
Yeah.
And so you get these fans that give you the levels that you need to do. So, go and roll up your workers or whatever, to make a certain type of planet, constellation, what have you. In those levels, you can occasionally, kind of like in Beautiful Katamari, where you can find your cousins and stuff like that. In this, you can find curios, which are, little items that I'm not entirely sure what they do, if I'm being honest. Or you can occasionally find fan Damacy. You can go on the online store and buy them for real money. And it took me ages to work out what they're used for. And what they're used for is, on the PlayStation Network store, are a bunch of free downloads for the game, which are extra levels. So I downloaded them. In the small print, you have to use the fan Damacy in the game to unlock them.
Oh, shit. Right, okay.
Which you have to pay for with real money if you can't find them. So actually, those free downloads that are labelled as free in the price are not free, which is another fucking cardinal sin. Now, I appreciate that it is written in the descriptions of these downloads, but that feels fucking shady to me. And like, I appreciate it came out when, the online gaming was and storefronts was a little bit of a wild west, and they were doing all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff, especially for portable games. Yeah. But this feels like a workaround at best, or like just an outright fucking misstep.
How many times have you said in the lifespan of this podcast about these little microtransactions on the Vita? It feels like they've absolutely fucking just went and done whatever they wanted with this console, Sony, and just been like, oh, no one will give a shit. Like, it should have been regulated well better than it has been. It's awful.
Yeah, it's, it was bad enough with, like, on the Xbox 360 and stuff like that. Like, you would, for every handful of games that would be a solid online service that would do exactly what it says on the tin, for a decent price, if not free, you'd have a couple that were really starting to kind of push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you see something like this, and then suddenly you get to, I don't know, Fortnite or whatever online game of choice nowadays that you choose, and it's suddenly you can see how we went down that slippery slope, down more microtransactions and stuff like that. And I know I bitch about them a lot, but shit, at least nowadays they're a little bit more upfront about it, a little bit.
Yeah.
But this, like the Vita, when it was doing this kind of shady stuff, was like the bad old days of like mobile apps and stuff like that, where you could get people racking up bills of however many thousands of pounds because they don't realise they're spending the money.
Yeah.
But it feels to me particularly bad to label something as free, but then state that you basically need to buy the currency in the game to unlock them. It's
not
very
a fan,
very easily missed, and not a fan. Like it handles well, but there's a lot that just feels like they were trying something a bit different, either for no reason or for the reason of trying to make a bit of extra cash, and it just feels a bit grubby and a bit like, well, you can do much better. Go get Damacy Reroll. It is as simple as that. And to your earlier point about did it need a remake? Did we need as many games? I think this is absolutely why Damacy needed a remake and a re-release, because everything since is just kind of fluff. Yeah. Like, that is the Katamari game, as far as I'm concerned. That is the one.
I was just reading as we were podding, and I'm sure I read that, like, We Love Katamari is, like, the one, like, I think it's, like, the sequel, maybe. And is that included? Yeah, so you can get that in Reroll, We Love Katamari Reroll, and Royal Reverie. That's just come out last year, I think it is.
Oh, right, nice.
So it might be one of those two things. It might be the version that people might want to go and get. If you're going to be bored to death, fuck me.
Well, I'm going to give Touch My Katamari a 4 out of 10, right?
Okay.
Because, like, it's not... The game itself, you can play, as is. You can go and buy it, and you can play it, and there is a game there. It's not like you have to do the extra bits that are labelled in a questionable manner. But the things that it tries to do different, there is no real need for it.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's doing slightly underhand stuff. It's a 4 out of 10 based purely on personal taste.
Yeah.
Rather than any kind of objective opinion.
I mean, it's our podcast. Say what you want.
Yeah. But for my money's worth, go get one of the remasters.
One of the things that really annoyed me about the PSP one was that there seemed to be loads of reviews of it that were like people just absolutely livid about the controls, and also actually people being in physical pain of playing it, and also that the draw distance wasn't very good and things. They were all, but then it was like, but 6 out of 10, and that's where we've gone back to with our scoring system before, where it's like that still says to me that it's like you're trying to tell people that you should still go and buy it, like almost in a way, like 6 out of 10. And it doesn't feel like the 6 out of 10s that we've spoke about, where we're like, this is actually a pretty good game, but it's a 6 out of 10. Like Driver 76 last week is, for me, I enjoyed my experience with that infinitely more. Well, not obviously from a mathematical point of view, but significantly more than me and My Katamari, and that got a 6 out of 10 for me. It wasn't as if it was like a banging game, like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 or anything. It definitely brought it home to me that it just felt like it was almost like a leftover legacy of. And this is, I guess, trying to get back to the point that you're making as well. It's almost like it feels like the best Katamaris feel like the first Katamaris.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's been diminishing returns since.
I think that's fair.
And
I do. And I think...
Which is ironic. It should be getting bigger and better.
Well, but if you manage to knock it out of the park with the first one or two, I think, having the stones to step away from it maybe would have been a good one. And I know we've said before now about like Sonic, you need to take creative risks and stuff like that. I think Katamari's kind of the other way, where the creative risk would have been to go, you know what?
Yeah.
We've nailed it.
Yeah.
We don't need to worry about it anymore. But
I never have all your money off you from the Vita people.
Well, this is the thing, because I think
how much money would they have actually made from that?
I would wager not a hell of a lot, because it's a niche audience anyway. And I could imagine that actually what they would have always wanted was to make a really decent mobile game, because I could imagine a good mobile Katamari game with microtransactions for different levels or something like that. I could see why they would be eyeballing that with intent. And I've not checked recently to see if there is one beyond the live background on my phone that you could get once upon a time. But yeah, I could see why this Vita version might have been something that they were looking at as a possible like proof of concept.
Yeah.
But that's pure speculation on my part.
No, I mean, I feel really bad because it's clearly something you have a lot of love for, and a lot of people seem to have a lot of love for it. You know, it's a critical darling. That they certainly re-roll and things, and I always feel bad when when it's something that I feel like I should be on board with. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
it's just
I wouldn't feel bad about it.
And it's you're almost like you want to love it, and when I kind of left the room the few times afterwards I played it, I was just like, I'm fine not playing that ever again. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like
this is why I've said time and time again that I genuinely think that trying to be objective with these sorts of reviews is you're always on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it makes way more sense to find a publication, an outlet, a critic, whatever that your personal opinions kind of gel with, and go with that. And then, like you say about the arbitrary scores, like it's a well-known thing where, you know, the magazines of old would occasionally play fast and loose with what numbers were, and I know IGN more recently have come under criticism for like saying one thing and then scoring it something else.
Because they get paid. They get paid for it. Like, they definitely get paid for it.
But yeah, it's easy to see how you end up with this whole notion of like, oh, 6 is a low score. It's like, no, it's low for IGN.
Was it like the recent news? Was it a Marvel game of some kind they were doing where they were doing alpha testing?
And they said you couldn't say anything negative about it.
Negative about the contract, and it's just like I bet everyone in the industry was like, you just fucked up the system. That is in,
don't say it.
Now we're all screwed. It's just like, brilliant.
Was there something in Retro Gamer as well where somebody was saying about giving a certain score something, and then one of their editors said, couldn't you have just said like it's good if you're into that sort of thing, or something like that? Like, there's a certain code phrase you could use for it's bollocks, but I have to score it above a certain number.
No, I mean, I love Retro Gamer because I feel like they're probably always, let's say always, like at least a little bit honest about that kind of thing. Probably, out of anybody.
I think the story was like a kind of throwaway comment about like far-flung in the past kind of publications and stuff like that, but it does make you wonder.
Yeah, I was on a really good run of games for a while there. I think the last bad game I played was like maybe Dead or Alive Paradise, so I had a few 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s, so it was about time I personally came down to earth a little bit.
I'm still, clinging to the fact that nothing I have ever played will be as bad as Carmageddon 64.
Wait until we should play. I should play that, and you should play Paratopic. God. Yeah, we won't wish shingles upon each other. Right, okay. on that note, thanks very much, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.